Tasha stared at the file timestamp. January 14th, 2009, 11:47 p.m. Status, Lev. That was impossible. That was 15 years ago. That was the night the equipment malfunctioned and she went home early. The night she thought ended in silence. But the file was 131,000 hours long. Still growing. Still recording. She clicked play. Static. Then a woman's voice. If you're hearing this, you've already been listening longer than you think. Tasha's stomach dropped. She scrolled forward. Hour 27,981, March 19th, 2024. 3 days ago, and she heard herself. Not from 2009, from now. The file had never stopped. For 15 years, everything she'd said inside KPTH public radio, every word, every conversation, every moment she thought was private, had been captured, cataloged, archived in a folder labeled Compliance Do Not Alter. Someone had been listening the entire time. If you've ever found something that made you question your own memory, this story will haunt you. Hit subscribe, because what Tasha discovers gets so much worse. Drop a comment if you've ever felt like you were being watched when you knew you were alone. Let's go back to the beginning. Tasha Williams started at KPTH Public Radio in Baltimore in January 2009. She was 28, fresh out of a production assistant gig in Atlanta, eager to prove herself. KPTH was a mid-tier NPR affiliate, respected, stable, the kind of place where you could build a real career. Her first solo overnight shift was January 14th, a Wednesday. The coldest night of the year, and the building's heating had gone out in the West Wing. She'd spent the evening prepping a segment on urban renewal projects. Nothing controversial, nothing memorable. Around 11:30 p.m., the equipment started acting strange. The mixing board showed phantom inputs, channels lighting up with signal, even though nothing was plugged in. The broadcast feed kept doubling back on itself, creating a half-second delay that made her voice echo from another room. She called the overnight engineer, Leonard, who'd been with the station since the 80s. He told her to reboot everything and go home. Happens sometimes when it's this cold. Connections expand and contract. Just log it and we'll check it tomorrow. She did. She logged the incident, shut down her session, and drove home through empty streets. That was 15 years ago. She barely thought about that night again. It became a blurry anecdote. Oh yeah, my first solo shift. The equipment went haywire and I got sent home. But in March 2024, Tasha was assigned a project no one else wanted, digitizing the station's pre-2012 archives. Thousands of hours of recordings stored on aging hard drives and DAT tapes, all needing transfer to the cloud before the equipment became obsolete. It was tedious work. Most of it was unremarkable. Pledge drives, interview segments, local news coverage that felt quaint now. She worked through it methodically, folder by folder. Then she opened the directory marked Compliance Do Not Alter, a subfolder she'd never seen referenced in any station documentation. The naming convention was strange. Most archive folders were labeled by year and program. This one had no program name, just a date range. January 14th, 2009/ongoing. Inside were 3 files. Primary feed, monitoring log, listener data. She clicked on primary feed. The metadata made her stomach tighten. File type, live broadcast stream. Duration, 131,472 to 18 minutes and 9 seconds, and counting. Start time, January 14th, 2009, 11:47:13 p.m. Status, active. 15 years, continuously recording. Still growing. Live broadcasts don't archive as live. When you record a show, it becomes a static file. Fixed duration. It closed. This file was still open, still receiving input. She clicked play. Static. Low. Textured like the hiss of an empty channel. Then a voice. Female. Calm. Almost familiar. If you're hearing this, you've already been listening longer than you think. Tasha's hand froze on the mouse. Don't stop now, you're almost where you need to be. Then silence. Just static again. She checked the timestamp. The voice had come from hour 3, minute 12, January 15th, 2009, the day after her first shift. She scrolled forward. Hour 100, hour 500, hour 10,000. Every few hundred hours, there were brief segments of audio, never more than 30 seconds. Always the same calm, measured tone, sometimes instructions, sometimes just breathing. At hour 27,981, she heard her own voice, not from 2009, from March 19th, 2024, 3 days ago. Tasha didn't go home that night. She sat in the archive room until 4 a.m., scrolling through the file, sampling hours at random. Most of it was static, long stretches of white noise, but every few hundred hours there were voices, sometimes hers, sometimes others. At hour 52,003, she heard Leonard, the overnight engineer from 2009. He'd retired in 2011, died in 2016. But in this file, recorded in 2018, he was giving her instructions. Tasha, you need to check the backup relay in Studio C, the one behind the old mixing board. You'll know it when you see it. She'd never worked in Studio C. It had been decommissioned in 2014. At hour 89,221, she heard herself again. From a conversation she remembered having last year with her colleague David in the break room, talking about expanding the podcast division. The recording was clear. No distortion. As if someone had been in the room with them, holding a microphone. Then came 10 seconds of silence, followed by the same calm female voice. She's getting closer. Adjust the interval. Tasha opened the second file. Monitoring_log, a spreadsheet. Thousands of entries. Dates, timestamps, duration codes, and a column labeled subject_engagement. January 15th, 2009, 12:04 a.m. Subject_01/duration 001642/engagement responsive. January 15th, 2009, 3:22 a.m. Subject_01/duration 00:08:19/engagement disoriented. January 16th, 2009, 11:47 p.m. Subject_01/duration 00:34:01/engagement. Normalized. Subject_01. The entries continued every single day, multiple times per day, for 15 years. The most recent entry was from 2 hours ago, March 22nd, 2024. 9:47 p.m. Subject_01/duration 01:12:33/engagement. Investigative. She checked her watch. 11:52 p.m. She'd been in the archive room for 1 hour and 12 minutes. The log was tracking her in real time. She stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. Her pulse hammered. She looked around the room. No cameras, no visible microphones, just old equipment and humming servers. But something was recording her. Right now. She grabbed her phone and opened the voice memo app. Started recording. My name is Tasha Williams. It's March 22nd, 2024, 11:53 p.m. I'm in the KPTH archive room and I found... Her phone screen went black. Not off. Black. The recording app was still open, but the interface was gone. Just a black screen with a single line of white text. You were always going to find this. Then, her phone rebooted. When it came back on, the voice memo was gone. The app showed no recent recordings. Tasha's hands were shaking. She opened the third file. Listener_data. It was an audio file. Not a spreadsheet. Not a log. She put her headphones on and hit play. Silence. Then breathing. Not hers. Someone else. Close to the microphone. Steady. Patient. It went on for 11 minutes. Just breathing. Then, at the 11:04 mark, the breathing stopped, and the same calm female voice spoke. "Hello, Tasha." Not from 2009, not from the archive, from now. The voice was live. Tasha didn't move. The voice in her headphones had said her name. Present tense. Live. She pulled the headphones off. The listener_data file was still playing. The waveform showed no more activity. Just silence. But the file was still open. Still live. She opened the station's internal server activity log. If something was transmitting in real time, there had to be a network signature. Bandwidth usage. Outgoing data. She found it immediately. An active upload stream, originating from the archive room. Continuous. 128 kilobits per second, running for 131,000 hours. The destination IP was unlisted. Not masked, just absent from any database she could access. The routing path showed the signal leaving the building, hitting a relay node downtown, then vanishing into an infrastructure gap that shouldn't exist. She tried to trace it manually. The relay node was located beneath an old transit station closed since 1987. The building above it was condemned. According to city records, the property was owned by a shell company that dissolved in 2003. But the relay was still active, still routing her signal. She checked the station's broadcast equipment logs, found the entry from January 14th, 2009. At 11:47 p.m., a secondary transmission channel had been opened. Not by her, not by Leonard. The access credentials were labeled maintenance_automation. The station didn't have automated maintenance protocols in 2009. The channel had been opened remotely, and it had never closed. For 15 years, everything she'd said inside KPTH, every phone call, every conversation, every off-air remark, had been routed through that secondary channel and archived in the compliance folder. Why, she wasn't just being recorded now. She'd been recorded since the beginning. Tasha opened her email and started typing a message to the station manager. She got 3 sentences in before the screen froze. Not a crash, a freeze. Then, slowly, her words began deleting themselves, one letter at a time, backward. When the email was blank, new text appeared. "You can't tell anyone who wouldn't already know." She stared at it. The text deleted itself. Her screen returned to normal. She tried again. Opened a browser, typed KPTH radio compliance folder into Google. 0 results. She tried KPTH 2009 broadcast malfunction. 0 results. She tried Tasha Williams, KPTH. The only results were her official bio on the station website and a few production credits. No social media, no interviews, no articles. Eek, she'd worked in public radio for 12 years. She should have a digital footprint. But according to the internet, she barely existed. She grabbed her phone and called David. He picked up on the 3rd ring, groggy. "Tasha, it's midnight. What's wrong? Do you remember me talking about my first night shift in 2009? Silence. "David? Yeah, I'm here. No, I don't think you ever mentioned it. Why? I've told you that story last year in the break room. Tasha, I don't know what you're talking about." Her throat tightened. "David, we've worked together for 6 years. You know I started here in 2009. Another pause. "Tasha, you started here in 2011. I was on the hiring committee." She hung up. She opened her personnel file, scanned down to the employment start date. Hired, March 3rd, 2011. Not 2009, 2011. But she remembered 2009. Yeah, she remembered the cold studio, the malfunctioning board, Leonard telling her to go home. She remembered it. She opened the primary_feed file again, scrolled to the beginning, hour 0, hit play. This time, she heard it clearly. The first sound in the file wasn't static. It was her own voice saying, "Is anyone there?" Tasha played the first 10 minutes of primary_feed 3 times. Each time she heard the same thing. Her voice, younger, uncertain. "Is anyone there?" A pause. I think something's wrong with the feed. Can you hear me? Another pause, then static. But beneath the static, barely audible, was another layer, a second voice, not hers, responding. She isolated the frequency, boosted the low end, filtered out the interference. The second voice became clear. We hear you, Tasha. Stay on the line. It was the same calm female voice from the listener_data file. But this was from 2009. 15 years ago, someone had been answering her, and she didn't remember it. She checked the monitoring log again, found the corresponding entry. January 14th, 2009, 11:47 p.m., subject_01/duration, 001642/engagement. Responsive. She'd responded. Which meant she'd heard the voice. She'd had a conversation. And then she'd forgotten. Tasha locked the archive room door. It wouldn't stop anything, but it made her feel slightly less exposed. She opened a new document, started writing everything she remembered about January 14th, 2009, the cold studio, the malfunctioning equipment, Leonard telling her to go home. But now, with the file open in front of her, she noticed gaps. She didn't remember driving home. She didn't remember what she did the next day. She didn't remember the week after. Her next clear memory was mid-February, a production meeting. Someone welcoming her back. Back from what? She opened her email archive, searched for messages from January 2009. Nothing. Searched for February. One email. From Leonard. Subject line, glad you're feeling better. Tasha, good to have you back in the rotation. Don't worry about the overnight shifts for a while. We'll keep you on daytime production until you're fully recovered. L. Recovered from what? She had no memory of being sick, no memory of taking time off. She called the station's HR department and left a voicemail asking for her medical leave records from 2009. She knew they wouldn't check it until morning, but she needed to do something. Then she went back to the listener_data file. This time she didn't just listen, she recorded it. She set up a secondary capture, routing the audio through an external device, bypassing the station's network entirely. She hit play. The breathing started again. 11 minutes. Then the voice. Hello, Tasha. She paused the file, took a breath. Resumed. You've been very patient. Most people stop listening after the first few hours, but you've always been different. You've always wanted to understand. The voice continued. You're wondering why you don't remember. That's natural. Memory is fragile, especially when you've been listening as long as you have. She stopped the file, opened the monitoring log, scrolled to the earliest entry, January 14th, 2009, 11:47 p.m., subject_01/duration, 001642/engagement, responsive. Then the next day, January 15th, 2009, 12:04 a.m., subject_01/duration, 001642/engagement, responsive. January 15th, 2009, 3:22 a.m., subject_01/duration, 000819/engagement, disoriented. January 15th, 2009, 6:41 a.m., subject_01/duration, 002247/engagement, normalized. 3 sessions in 6 hours. She kept scrolling. Every day. Multiple sessions. For 6 weeks. And then the frequency dropped. Once a day. Once every few days. By March 2009. Once a week. But it never stopped. For 15 years, the log showed consistent engagement. She'd been listening. She just didn't remember. She opened the primary underscore feed and jumped to a random point. Hour 45,692, October 2014. She heard herself talking, Not to anyone in particular, just talking, describing her day, her thoughts, her fears, like she was confiding in someone. But she had no memory of this conversation. She jumped to another point. Hour 98,320, April 2020. Her voice again, talking about the pandemic, about isolation. "I know you're still there," her recorded voice said. "I can feel it." She wasn't just being recorded. She was participating. And every time, afterward, she forgot. Tasha didn't sleep. By 6 a.m., she'd mapped out the entire structure. The primary feed was the continuous broadcast, everything she'd ever said within range of KPTH's equipment, archived in real time. The monitoring_log tracked her engagement. Every time she'd listened to the feed, how long, how she'd responded. The listener_data file was the response mechanism, the voice that spoke back. It was a loop. She broadcast, she listened, she responded, she forgot, and it had been running for 15 years. But there was one thing that didn't make sense. If she'd been listening regularly, engaging with the feed, responding to the voice, where had she been doing it? She checked the monitoring log timestamps. Most sessions occurred late at night, between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., the overnight shift hours. But she hadn't worked overnight since 2009. According to her personnel file, she'd been on daytime production since March 2011. She pulled up the station's shift schedules, went back through every year, and found something wrong. The schedules showed her working overnight, regularly, once or twice a week, for 15 years. But the payroll records didn't match. She'd never been paid for those shifts. She grabbed her coat and went to Studio C, the old studio, the one that had been decommissioned in 2014. The door was locked, but she had a master key. She opened it and stepped inside. The room was supposed to be storage, boxes of old press kits, outdated equipment, shelves of labeled binders. But in the back corner, behind a stack of plastic crates, the old mixing board was still there, still plugged in, still on. The monitor above it showed an active session, her name in the user field, a live microphone channel, and a timer, 02:14:38:51. 2 days, 14 hours. She'd been broadcasting. Right now. From a studio she thought was abandoned. Tasha walked slowly to the mixing board, touched the edge. It was warm. The microphone in front of her was active, the input meter flickering with ambient sound. She leaned down and spoke into it. "Who's listening?" The meter spiked. Then, from the monitor's built-in speaker, a voice responded. The same calm female voice, but this time, immediate. "You are Tasha." She stepped back. The voice continued. "You've been listening to yourself for 15 years. We don't broadcast to you. You broadcast to you. This is your archive, your memory, everything you didn't want to carry in the daytime." Tasha's pulse hammered. That's not possible. You started this the night you thought the equipment malfunctioned. You opened the secondary channel because you needed somewhere to put the things you couldn't say out loud. Somewhere private, somewhere safe. I don't remember that. Because you chose not to. Every night you come here, you talk, you listen, and then you leave. And in the morning, you let it go. That was the agreement. I didn't agree to anything. You did, January 14th, 2009. You asked if anyone was there. We told you. We're always here. You just have to keep listening. Tasha looked at the monitor. The session timer was still running. What happens if I stop? Silence. Then, "You've tried before." She felt a chill. "When?" 2011. You stopped coming for 3 months. Then you started forgetting other things. Your address. Your colleagues' names. The reason you became a radio host. By June, you couldn't remember your own voice, so you came back. The voice didn't answer. Instead, the monitor changed. A new file opened. From today. A video file. Security footage. From the archive room. Last night. Showing her sitting at the workstation. But she wasn't alone. Standing behind her, just outside the camera's frame, was a figure. Blurred, indistinct, watching. The footage continued. Tasha on screen stood up, turned, and walked directly toward the figure. The two of them stood face to face. Then the Tasha in the footage spoke, not to the figure, to the camera. "I'll see you tonight." The video ended. 11:47 p.m. The same time the channel had opened 15 years ago, a new session was starting. Tasha stood in front of the mixing board for a long time. The session was active. The microphone was live. The timer was running. And somewhere in the archive, a new file was being written. She thought about leaving, walking out, never coming back. But the voice had been right. She'd tried that before, and something worse had happened. She sat down in front of the microphone. "I want to hear it," she said. "All of it. From the beginning." The monitor flickered. A new file opened. Primary feed. Full playback. It started where it always started. January 14th, 2009, 11:47 p.m. Her younger voice. "Is anyone there?" And then, clearly now, the response. "We hear you, Tasha. Stay on the line." But this time, she heard what came next. Her own voice, answering. "I don't know if I can do this." The calm voice. "Do what?" "Be here. Every day. Yeah, pretending I'm fine. Pretending I know what I'm doing. You don't have to pretend here." "Then what is this?" "This is the place where you don't have to carry it. You can leave it here. We'll hold it for you." Tasha listened to herself cry. She didn't remember crying that night, but she heard it now. And she heard the voice, patient, constant, telling her it was okay. The playback continued. Weeks of late-night confessions, fears about her career, doubts about her talent, memories she didn't want to carry into the daylight. By February, the sessions had become routine. She'd come to Studio C, talk for an hour, listen to herself, and then leave. And every time, the voice would say the same thing. "You can let it go now." And she would. The file jumped forward. 2011. The 3-month gap. She heard herself on a session from June. Barely coherent. "I don't know where I am. I don't know why I stopped coming here. I can't remember things. I need..." The voice. "You need to come back. This is where you put the weight. Without it, you carry everything, and you're not built for that." The sessions resumed, and Tasha's life stabilized. The playback moved through the years. 2013, 2016, 2020. Every session, the same structure. She talked. The voice listened. She let it go. And in the morning, she didn't remember. But she functioned. She built a career. She made friends. She lived a life. Because every night she had a place to put the things that would have broken her. The playback stopped at March 22nd, 2024. Last night. She heard herself in the archive room, finding the files, panicking, trying to call for help. And then she heard herself walk to Studio C, sit down at the microphone, and say, "I think I'm ready to remember." The calm voice, "Are you sure?" Her own voice, steady, "No, but I need to know." "Then we'll let you find it. And when you do, you'll understand. This was always yours. We've just been keeping it safe." The playback ended. Tasha sat in the silence. The session timer was still running. She looked at the microphone. "So what happens now?" The voice responded. "Live. That's up to you. You can keep coming here. You can keep leaving the weight behind, or you can take it with you. But if you do, you'll remember all of it. Every night, every word, every fear, and you'll have to carry it alone." Tasha closed her eyes. She thought about the last 15 years, the stability, the career, the version of herself she'd built in the daylight. And she thought about the version that came here every night, the one who couldn't hold it all. She opened her eyes. "I think I need to keep coming back." The voice was quiet for a moment, then, "We'll be here." Tasha stood up, turned off the microphone, and walked out of Studio C. By the time she reached her car, she'd forgotten why she'd gone inside, but she felt lighter. And tomorrow night, at 11:47, she'd come back. She always did.